Hey, good morning, everyone. Today's lesson is going to focus on using adverbial phrases. Now, we've been looking specifically at things. Look, it's Steve Aoki again, uh, dealing with the past. So, the use of the past perfect as well as third conditional, which has past perfect and present perfect looking structures, and definitely the use of the past participles. Now, when we think of adverbials, we're thinking of words that are describing an action. Add verb. So we're adding information to our verbs. Specifically, we're talking about time. Now, in our lessons, we're going to make it a little bit wider. In our lesson today, we're going to talk a little bit more than just verbs of time. I'm going to show you about 6 different ones, including the 4 that is mentioned for your unit. And we're going to try to use them in different scenarios. Now, of course, instead of what we normally do, I'm going to change things up a little bit so we can practice and also look at what you've done so far and kind of talk about what we have coming in the next couple of days and weeks, right? So if you haven't done so already, let me just open up the first block. The first block that you should have completed would have been the past perfect. In the past perfect, your goal was to be able to look at actions that occurred in the past and that were looking to express the past of the past, something that led to another action, right? Now, usually with our sentences, particularly when we're telling stories, we have a sequence of activities. So the past perfect there is going to be referring to sometime in the past, and it's usually preceding a past simple. Now, after that, we looked specifically at the past participles, because if we're going to be making perfect sentences and conditional sentences, we need to use participles. Now, the participles are usually what we call the third form of our verbs. So if we think we have present forms, then we think of our continuous forms. We also think of our participle forms. Now, participles can be used, as you can tell, with the present and past and future perfect tenses. We use it also when we talk about things in the passive voice, when we talk about wishes and the unreal past, and of course, the third conditional that we did last week. Now, the use of participles is very common. The big task for you guys would have been which one of these verbs is a regular verb and which one of these are irregular. Now, this should have taken you into a good little mind frame. And last week, we tackled the conditional phrases. Now, conditionals are sentences that express the result of a condition. Now, as I mentioned, the zero condition expresses ideas that are always true. So the cause and effect of immediate condition to its result. Then, of course, we have the future possibilities. So what happens if something else happens? What will happen if something else happens? We didn't focus too much on the second conditional, but the second conditional is the first of what we call our unreal conditions. And that one was looking specifically at if I had an idea, what would be the result of this idea? And those are what we call hypothetical situations. They're not real. They are missing an action. And we would do that if certain conditions were true, but they're not true. And as we look at things that are not true, sometimes we want to change the past. And as we look at that past, like we thought about in the past perfect in those stories, sometimes we want to change our story. And that change of story to express what would happen if I could change the past is the third conditional. Now, the third conditional uses the past perfect. So, had something changed in the past, you would have, might have, could have different results. Now, today we're going to do something a lot easier. Today we're going to quickly look at adverbs. Now, I'm going to focus on adverbial phrases, and as you can tell from the preview video, you can think of some of them as future. At the end of this class, I'm going to send you another one to look at a little bit more at the past, because we were looking at third conditional and past leaning sentences. That first video was more future leaning. And you will see that you can use adverbial phrases in different ways. Now, you might say, okay, these adverbial phrases all look like they're talking about time. And that's true. For our purposes, we were looking at phrases that dealt with the time. Now, when, before, until, and by the time all help us in some shape or form when we tell stories, particularly as we were telling stories from the past. So these ones are going to help us to line up the events in the order that they happened. Now, we have a lot of other adverbs, so it's important that you understand that these are not the only types of adverbs, but these are just the adverbs that we are going to be looking at today. And if you've done all of that, then you are ready to go ahead and tackle exam 1 and 2, which is already open for those who have completed everything. Now, let's dive in. I'm going to start from the top. I see we still have some people coming in. And let's look at some adverbial phrases. I've chosen just a few of them as we try to zone in, and we'll try to find multiple different activities so we can practice different types of adverbs. All right? So, without any further delay, let me start with Alexis. Alexis, we have lots of adverbial clauses of time. All right? And the ones I shared with you might have felt like they were leaning towards the future. We have lots of them. So when, before, after, as, by the time, while, until, as soon as, since, no sooner, as long as. All of these are what we call adverbial phrases of time, and they're all useful. I want us to focus a little bit on the ones in our unit. So Alexis, let's start with when. Can you read for me? When? Maybe you didn't hear his name. Alexis, are you there? And thank you guys. I see everyone is in. Everyone is adding their names and groups to the chat. If you haven't done so, do make sure to add your name and groups to the chat so we can keep our attendance. All right. Maybe his microphone isn't working so well. Anna, help him out with when.
Yes, when the word when is generally used to indicate at the moment or at the time, you can also notice the difference in the sentences that are used.
Go ahead.
All these clauses are in the relation to the clause, which indicates that they are beginning with time. While you are using the word when, then make sure that it will take the form of simple past or simple present. Most Most of the depend clauses change the tense in relation to the when clause. I read the
The
example.
examples, yes, please.
Maria was talking on the phone when all her friends arrived at the party. She was walking down the lane when he was working on his programs.
Mm-hmm.
Megana could wash the dishes when her baby was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
We can have lunch when you are done with your homework.
Good. Now, when doesn't really feel like a third conditional phrase. It does help us with separating ideas, and we could probably use it more in, say, the past perfect phrases. All right, so let's try. Now you use our writing tool, and let's start off with a past perfect type of example. All right, now remember, for past perfect, you're going to need your verb had, and you're going to use your past participle. And generally in our sentences, guys, try to think of your person who's doing the action. We're also going to be thinking of the action, so what verb you want to use. And if there are some sort of complements, who's receiving the action, the time in your sentences. Right? So try to keep it at least with those three things. All right? Angel, let's practice with when. For example, with the past perfect, you can do a lot with when. I had started studying English when, I don't need my comma, let me take out the comma. When I went on a student exchange program to Canada. Right? Notice I use my past perfect. I actually use the past perfect continuous. I use my when to separate my first clause, which is the past perfect, from my past simple clause. Right? Angel, try the same. It doesn't have to be so complex. Give me a past perfect example with when.
He had studied French before moving to Paris.
All right. Let's change the before to when. All right. We want you to practice with when. So he had studied French and let's give it some time for 2 years when he moved to Paris. Repeat.
He had studied French for 2 years when he moved to Paris.
All right. Now, why did I use for 2 years? Now, I generally want you guys to be making very good use of your words, and when is going to be indicating a moment. Now, the moment is he moved to Paris. What happened before is the past perfect. So you want to be able to clearly show the difference between one action and the other action, right? I'm going to grab this. Let me drop it over in our chat. And we're going to go to third conditional, and we'll also use when. Now, with when and the third conditional, things are a little bit different. Because generally, third conditionals, when we use our time expressions, we have to be very careful since each conditional has a different purpose. Now, the third conditional is used for regrets or missed opportunities. But when is generally not used for a perfect tense. It's usually used closer, as you can tell here, with the simple tense. All right? So it would be a little bit more of a mixed conditional than a third conditional. For example, with a third conditional, you go with if plus your past perfect, and that is connected to your resulting would have plus your verb in participle. And it's going to be past participle, guys. All right? Let me make it a little bit wider. Past participle. Now, generally, when is not the best option because when is going to be more useful for the first or zero conditional. Why? Because those conditions are immediate. All right? With the zero conditional, when you boil water, steam comes off. Why? Because it's immediate. So when is very good for the simple. All right? It's not so good for the third conditional because these are not simple tenses. These are more on the perfect or the participle using tenses. All right? So I'm going to show you an example of a third conditional. Then we're going to practice it with when, with a more simple, with a zero conditional. All right, so for example here, the third conditional, if I had not watched so many episodes. I'm going to sneak in when, but it's not very ideal. When the series launched, I would have slept more. All right. Now, obviously, I did not sleep more because I was watching so many bits of the series. Right. Now, here, I'm separating my first idea here, my past perfect idea, and my past simple idea. That's the only time I can use my when. All right. Now, it's much more common to find when in the zero conditional. Which is your cause and effect conditional. For example, when I wake up, I go to the bathroom. Right? This is my pattern. Right? And this is normally what happens. All right, so you can use when there. Let's go with Anwar. Anwar, when you boil water to 100 degrees Celsius, what happens?
Yeah, teacher, can you hear me? I don't understand.
Yes, no problem. When you boil water to 100 degrees Celsius, what happens?
It's cold.
Okay, it gets hot. All right. So when you boil water, and what it says? It gets hot. All right. The zero conditional will always tell you the immediate result. And when is very useful for that conditional. Not so useful in the third conditional. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to drop this one in our chat as well. And let's continue with another of our words. And as you can tell, we have about 4, but I'm going to do about 6 adverbial clauses. All right. The next adverbial clause I'll look at is, let me scroll down, before, which is also in your list of adverbs for this unit. So we looked at when, let's look at before. All right, and this time I'll go with Ashley. Daniela, before. Can you read for us? Did we lose Ashley? I think we lost Ashley right away. Right, and Alexis, I was calling on you earlier. Is your microphone working, Alexis? Are you there with us? Maybe Alexis is also missing in action. All right, while those people figure out how to use their microphones, I'll continue with Jennifer. Jennifer, let's go with before.
Yes, before. The word before is used to indicate the before moment. Make sure that you remember to use the word before in a simple past or present. The food will be finished before Megna arrives. She left for the train before I could call her.
Good. Now, before is much more flexible. We can use before in almost all of our expressions because it's pretty simple. All right. Now, if you think of when, we saw when before when we were practicing when and while because they're used for interruptions or separation of ideas. And if you were to translate it, when is your cuando. So it's pointing at one specific moment in time. Your before, much more flexible because it's talking about all of the time preceding an event. Now that time could be past perfect, past simple, could be a lot of different things. All right. So let's practice with before. And let's try it with our past perfect. All right. Now I'm going to put someone on the spot again. Let me just double check to see if Alexis is alive. Okay, that internet might be a little bit slow on Alexis' side. All right. Now, if you think of before, you're probably going to think also of after, but let's practice with before first. Now, with past perfect, we need to use our verbs and our participles. Same thing with conditional. I'm going to show you an example of using past perfect and before. Kind of complex, but not too hard. All right. For example, had he traveled to Oaxaca before All right. And I can give you one with third conditional as well. And I'll keep the same idea. This time expressing a missed opportunity. Had he traveled to Oaxaca before, he would have eaten tlayudas. All right? But he didn't, had never traveled to Oaxaca, so of course he had never tried tlayudas. All right? Now, Carlos, let's try the same thing. Let's practice with before, and let's give me a simple sentence. It doesn't have to be past perfect. It doesn't have to be third conditional. Let's just practice with before.
Yes. Had she finished? Exactly. Had she finished her homework before?
Yeah, good. All right. Now we could add extra to this, like had she finished her homework before going to bed? And you could turn this also into a third conditional phrase. All right. Had she finished make sure I put it before here. Had she finished her homework before midnight, she would have gotten full marks. All right. So that's a good way there of using before. All right. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll copy this over, guys, so you can have it. I'll drop it in your chat. And let's continue after. All right. And this time, let's see. Let's go with Campos Luna. After.
Yes, teacher. After, the word after will indicate the event which is happening after something. The word is used to explain the future moment, past or past perfect. He will fishing the homework after returning from the zoo. Moana worked after I left the room. We will finish after he comes. She ate after I had left.
Good. All right. So this one's a lot more straightforward. And if you didn't notice, before and after are opposites. All right. If you think of a timeline, and you think of right now as your present, on one side you will have before, and on the other side you'll have after. All right. Now, just the same, if we were to use after, we can definitely use it in past perfect, and can definitely use it the same in our third conditional. So let's dive in. I had read the book. After watching the movie, it made more sense, right? And we can use it in third conditional as well. If they had visited him after the accident, they would have known about his condition, right? So after, a little bit more flexible, definitely something you can use with past perfect and with the third conditional, right? So let's do the same. And this time, let's go with Rebecca. Let's try to practice it. It doesn't have to be very complex, but let's practice with after.
In past perfect,
Sure, whatever you'd like.
I went to the party after I had finished my chores.
Good. I went to the party. Hope it was a good party. After I had finished my chores. Excellent choice. All right, good. All right, and that's the use of after, guys. Good job. All right, I'll drop this one in the chat as well. And Alexis, if your microphone is the problem and you want to participate, you can always write in the chat. Okay, Alexis? I don't think we've heard you today at all. All right, let me clear my screen quickly. And let's now continue with while and as. Now I'm going to read here because this one is not so important to today's activities. And we saw while before when we were practicing when and while. Now, when and while are used when we're interrupting sentences, usually showing one different sentence. Now, if you noticed with when, the position of when in the middle, you had one action happening here and a result happening after. Very similar with while. You usually have like the past simple happening or the past simple finished, and it's interrupted by another action, usually a continuous action, right? So while is used in combination with a lot of our phrases, particularly with the past continuous. It explains that moment during time, usually showing where interruption happens or when the action continues to progress. For example, I began working while I was washing the dishes, or while the students were writing, the teacher started a new topic. Now, as with the others, you can definitely use it with different tenses. Here, let's jump over to by the time, which is one of the phrases in your unit. And let's go with Danae Guzman. Number 5, by the time.
Yes, teacher. By the time, it is basically used to basically used to express or convey the idea of an event that is completed before another. You must note that this word is used as an adverbial clause in the past perfect tense and future perfect tense. It will impact the main clause of the sentence. By the time they finished, she had cooked dinner. Students will have finished their homework by the time teachers arrive.
Good. All right. And until Let's go with Daniela Azarte, number 6.
Yes, until till with these adverbial clauses, you can express to that up to that time. It
Mhm.
will be used in either a simple past or simple present.
Mhm.
Let's have a look at the examples. We shall wait until she finished her cooking. Magna will work until you finish yours.
Good. All right. Now, I'm going to switch from giving you some things to answer, and I want you to practice live. So just like we've been writing here, your goal, guys, is going to be simple. In the chat, I'm going to share the chat on the screen. I want everyone just jump over in the chat and write a simple sentence. Your sentence does not have to be complex. It's up to you. I want you to practice with your adverbial phrases. All right? So choose one and quickly write in the chat. I'll react to your sentences. I'll read your sentences live when it comes to these chats. All right? I'm going to move the chat onto the main screen and I'm going to share the chat. All right? So I'm going to switch my screen to the chat screen. All right, and you tell me if you can see. You should be able to see the chat now. All right, guys, so there in our chat, go ahead and just choose a phrase that you want to practice with. You may want to practice with before, you want to practice with when, you want to practice with until, or you want to practice with by the time. All right, now let me quickly minimize the chat again. By the time, I didn't give you guys any examples. So let me quickly show you an example with by the time and until, and that will give you a couple minutes to practice. I'll combine by the time and until a little bit. I'll use one for past perfect and I'll use one for the third conditional. All right. Now, if you think of by the time, it's expressing basically something led to another completed action. So I had traveled to more than 10 cities away from my hometown by the time I started university. And I still love traveling. I I'm going to make a conditional phrase here. I would have visited Mexico. Just make that capital M. Mexico sooner if I had not gone to let's go with Cayman islands. I waited until I was in my final year to go to Cancun. All right. So you can use until, you can definitely use by the time, you can use when, and you can definitely use before. All right. I'm going to put these two examples in the chat as well. And let's practice, guys. All right. Look at the different ones that you're using and just write your responses in the chat. All right. So I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to bring back over the chat box. And I think Alexis should definitely start. Alexis, we haven't heard or seen you all this time, but it doesn't have to be Alexis first. Anyone, today we're not going to go to exercise mode. So anyone that hasn't participated, you can go definitely ahead and write yours. And I'm going to quickly go through the people I am seeing, and then I'll start going through. So in the chat, guys, write an example with before, when, until, and by the time. And those who have already participated, you can participate again. All right, so that's Alexis, Anna, Angel. I know we have another Angel, so welcome, Angel Dada. Hopefully you've added your name and group to the chat. Anwar, Brenda, Jennifer, Carlos, Luna, Rebecca, Danae, Daniela, Darian, Diana, Dianette, Donna, Paula, Stephanie, Fatima, Frida, Lorena, Ian, Jonathan, Juan, Carla, Kelly, Mariana, Karime, Daniela Lopez, Maria, Merari, Jimena, Miriam, Monse, Itzamari, Naomi, Santiago, Omar, and Patricio. Good. All right. We have our first. By the time the firefighters arrived, the house was already destroyed. Excellent. All right. And guys, if you're not sure how to write your sentence, that's fine. Let me know and I will help you. All right. Good. Thank you, Juan. And Jonathan says, by the time I started university, I had traveled to more than 10 cities away from my hometown. Jonathan, that looks like my sentence. That's good. All right. Donna says, we should arrive at the university before sunset. That's a good idea. You don't want to be traveling when it's still bright out. By the time I arrived at the clinic, the patient had already left. Oopsie. I waited until the dentist finished the procedure. All right, Frida says, if she had gone to the doctor before the pain got worse, she would have avoided surgery. Definitely. But she didn't. And now she has to pay for an expensive operation. All right. Then we have Lorena. Lorena says, before I went to sleep, I had checked my phone just to make sure no one sent me any important messages. All right. Maho says, before I went to sleep, I brushed my teeth. Very important. You're making sure that you help your mouth get rid of any extra food so that your mouth doesn't have extra work during the night. All right. Santiago says, by the time the rain stopped, the city had completely changed its mood. Okay. All right. So by the time the rain stopped, everyone was feeling maybe a little more sad. Not everyone loves the rain. All right. Montserrat says they had waited outside until the store opened because there were lots of new music to buy. I feel nervous when I see an exam. Don't be nervous, Carla. This exam is easy, right? Particularly if you have already practiced before taking the exam, right? Daniela says, by the time I arrived, they had already left. Easy peasy. Kelly says, by the time they finished, she had cooked dinner. Yummy. Hope the food was good. Danae says, by the time the bus arrived, she had waited for an hour. All right. Brenda says, by the time the dentist arrived, the patient had already taken the pain medication. Not sure if this is good or bad, but at least the patient is not in so much pain. All right, be careful, Alexis, you forgot your D. I had visited, you don't need the two, all right? I had visited my grandmother after I worked my homework. All right, let's make two quick adjustments here. I had visited my grandmother after I worked on my homework, right? Just to make sure that your ideas connect, right? Let's continue with the Annette. By the time they finished the exam, the bell had rung. Kelly says again, I began working while I was washing the dishes. Smart. Now, this looks like one of the sentences that's in our examples. All right. Dara says he went to work after he fed the cats. Very good guy. Cats need their food too. Naomi says by the time the class ended, we were tired. Very good. You hope your brain wasn't too exhausted. By the time the teacher finished the explanation, I had already written my examples. Thank you, Paula. By the time she called me, I had already finished the work. Thank you, Patricio. Mr. Kenny. All right. Jennifer says, before I cooked, I had washed my hands. Very important. You don't want to transfer any bacteria to your food. Kelly comes in again and she says, we should wait until she finish. Okay, be careful here, Kelly. You're telling me something that you're recommending, right? And you are showing me a few different times, right? So we should wait until you're telling me that she is cooking at the moment. So change the finish to finishes. Or we should have waited until she finished her cooking. All right. And here, you don't even need the her. Since you already tell me it's a lady here, you can take out that second her and leave it more simple with finished cooking. All right. So both of these are good. Just adjust it a little bit more for clarity. All right. But somebody says, by the time I arrived at the kitchen, all right, my brother had already finished his breakfast. I waited until my mother prepared the coffee. All right, this is good. All right, I would change at to in because at the kitchen sounds like it's not in your house. It was another kitchen. All right, but grammatically, it's okay. Mariana says, before I went to bed, I cleaned my face. Yes, Mariana, definitely want to wash your face before you go to bed. All right. I'm going to adjust your sentence a little bit more. One, because I want you to make sure you're practicing capitalizing your letters. All right. I is going to be capitalized when you're referring to yourself. All right. And I went to bed before the verb you'd use more often is washed. Before I went to bed, I washed my face. Applying water and soap is usually wash. If you tell me you clean, you're probably just using wipes to take off the makeup or something like that. All right. Let's continue with Leon says, I stayed at the library until I finished my homework. Okie dokie. Karime says, by the time we got home, it had stopped raining. Oh, good. Darian says, I felt happy when I got my exam results. Same thing. Darian, make sure to capitalize your I when you are writing. All right. I see that you're ending your sentences with full stops. So good job. All right. Just want to make sure you guys practice your capitalizations. All right. After Darian, we have Jimena. They had eaten dinner when I arrived. I hope you weren't feeling too lonely. Luna says, I felt better after I took the medicine. That means the medicine worked. Miriam says, by the time the bus came, I had been waiting for an hour. I hope you weren't too disappointed. Anna says, I felt sad when I, okay, again, be very careful with your I. And you told me that you felt sad. So your modal would be best used in a different form. Right? I felt sad when I couldn't. Let's use this version, BTS tickets. All right? You don't even need your comma there. You can do without it because both ideas are one clause. Here, I'll even edit mine to take out the comma. You don't need a comma there. All right. Carlos says, I had woken up by the time my alarm rang. Okay, lucky you. Naomi says, before class starts, I finish my lunch. All right, so this is your general activity. Every time you have classes around midday, you want to make sure you eat. Omar says, by the time I finished isolating the area, okay, so you were cleaning away, maybe extra here, maybe just applying some sedatives or anesthetics. The patient had already left. Oh, so you wanted to create an area for this patient, but the patient was impatient and they left. All right. Rebecca says, I will drink a hot tea after I finish class. That's a very good idea today. While it is very clear skied, maybe sunny, it is not hot. It's pretty cool. All right. Anwar says, I had wake up when the earthquake alert sounded. All right. Here, we're going to jump in and we're going to adjust two quick things, Anwar. All right. Your verb is irregular. All right. So I had woken up. All right. You don't need your comma for when the earthquake alarm sounded. All right. We generally use when the earthquake alarm went off, but sounded is also fine. All right. And Fatima says, before I started university, I had traveled to more than 10 cities. Fatima, that's mine. You and you and I think someone else made a nice little adjustment to my sentence.
Teacher,
Yes, Daniela.
no sé si solo soy yo, pero no puedo ver nada en la pantalla.
Yeah, I think because it's a chat box, you guys are not seeing the chat box. When I shared it, I noticed it shared screen one, but I don't think you guys can see the screen. Let me do it again. I'm going to share screen again, and this time you should be able to see with the Zoom window. All right? So those were our sentences. If you didn't get a chance to, I'm going to be sharing some notes in our classroom, so you can always comment in the classroom. All right? And now, Daniela, you should be able to see all of the responses. Of course, you should also be able to see them in the chat directly. And I think I got to everyone's sentence, right? And if I missed any, do let me know. All right, so those were your sentences. in the chat. Now, just a quick takeaway, guys. Remember, complete all of your activities and your self-assessments. Update your folders. Let me know that you have updated the folders. I will check. And the exam 1 and 2 is open. If you've finished practicing, it's time to go and log in and do the exam. Same rules apply. You do not need to complete the non-reactives. Focus on the ones that are reactive and will give you a score instantly. You are already practicing writing and speaking in your folders, right? Do take care. I'm going to be on campus next week. So if you have questions or if you just want to visit the media library, come on by and get to work, guys. Enjoy your Saturday, and I will see you soon. Thank you guys for all participating. I think I missed some people who did not leave theirs. I don't remember if I saw any from Ian. Right, but guys, I will be sharing, or Alexis, I'm still not sure if Alexis is alive. I will be sharing notes in your Google Classroom. So if you did not participate there, you can participate over here. And of course, you have your forums, etc. All right, do take care, guys. All the best.
Thank you,
Bye,
teacher.
teacher.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
guys.
teacher.
You're welcome.